actually started way back in 1861, so that's 155 years ago. The underlying cause of the Civil War was slavery. Slavery was occurring in the southern states and not in the northern states, so to speak. And what happened was there was an election in 1860, and Abraham Lincoln was elected president. As soon as that happened, all the southern states began to secede. There were 11 states that eventually seceded. They left the Union. So think about it as leaving the United States. And what happened was January, I guess they started seceding. In February, more seceded, the southern states, and in March. And in April, finally, there was an attack on Fort Sumter, a U.S. fort, by Confederate forces. So once that was open warfare, President Lincoln made a call for 75,000 troops. He thought the war would be over in 3 months, and we all know it lasted 4 years, but at the time. So they made a call for U.S. soldiers, or the call to the northern states, to come down, bring their soldiers to defend the capital. And I represent the Lawrence Company. It was one of the companies that went down. The 6th Massachusetts Regiment, Company I from Lawrence, went down to Washington. On their way, they were attacked in Baltimore, and 4 soldiers were killed. I think there were upwards of 30 soldiers were wounded, and I think up to either 11 or 13 civilians were killed down there. And then the troops went on to Washington. But the importance to Lawrence is that the first soldier mortally wounded by the enemy, the first Northern soldier, was Sumner Needham, and he was from Lawrence, Massachusetts, Company I, the company that I represent. So that's why the reenactors are here. And the war went on for 4 long years. Everybody thought, President Lincoln thought it was going to last 3 months, but it lasted 4 years. And terrible loss of life. There was over 600,000 casualties, American casualties, during the war. So, and we're here today just to reenact, to have fun. We have artillery here. You could hear the cannons booming in the background. And I represent infantry. There are 2 separate artillery groups that fire cannons. And we're having a children's muster. Everybody come on down, enjoy the day, everything's free, and you'll have a good time.
My name is Jim DeMars, and I am the first sergeant of the 6th Maine Light Artillery Battery. So my duties is to make sure the camp is run properly. I make sure all the soldiers are doing their jobs, making sure if we have a captain in camp, that I take care of him also. So I'm the guy that makes things happen in the camp. So they all report to me, the corporals and the sergeants, and I maintain the camp street for the captain. All right, so this is a 10-pound Parrott rifle, and this is the limber chest, which is back there. So you have a limber chest and your rifle. So in a battery, you would have 6 cannons. So that means you would have 6 limbers, and you'd also have 6 caissons in the battery. So each one of these guns has a corporal on it. So the corporal's in charge of the gun itself. So you'll have 6 corporals. You'll have probably 3 sergeants in the battery, plus the first sergeant, and then you'll have some officers. So each 2 cannons would have a lieutenant, so he'd be in charge of the 2 cannons, and the corporals and sergeants would report up to him for their duties. Overall, I'd see the whole battery, and my job is when the captain is sorry, these guys are over there. When the captain's, I make sure that I'm out there with the captain, so I'll be right with the captain on the field. when we're engaged into combat there. So each cannon. So these are our implements here. So if I this first one there, it has like a little hook on it. That is a worm. So that's how you actually clean the barrel out. So if you're always going to have remnants in here after you shoot. So you actually put that piece down there. That cleans out any remnants out of the cannon. Then you have a wet sponge, which is this first sponge there. You'll always put that down. That way you take care of any embers that are in the cannon. And then you have a dry sponge. And as you can see on the dry sponge, it has a different rammer head. That's what they actually push the round down the tube with. So each position, so over here, this would be a number 1 guy. Behind him would be number 3. Then a guy down here would be number 5. Same over here, you'd have a number 2 guy right here. Number 4, number 6, and then back on the limber it would be 7 and 8. So you'd have 8-man crew plus a corporal.
So this is what was called the Sutler, and for the purposes of this event we have a lot of stuff tailored to the public, but back then they would have had a lot of things for the soldiers, buttons if they lost them on their uniform, socks, candles, things they would have needed in the field. Like this is actually called a housewife, and it's, as you can see, a sewing kit. So it has all kinds of thread, buttons you can see, some extra, if you got a hole in your uniform, you can patch that right up, and it just kind of folds right up like that and ties. Nice and small, they can keep it with them whenever they need to patch something up. Yeah, we've got some hats here, some bonnets, some aprons, everything's, these are all homemade here. I'll show you the aprons. So they would have been just like that. There's a piece here that would come right up to kind of protect you a little bit, kind of like a bib. But yeah, they would have followed the soldiers around, and they would have had some different supplies that they would need for when they're out in battle and all that.